My question simply is one, should anyone be put in jail for a speech? I think the Supreme Court laws on sedition or the Supreme Court interpretation of sedition is quite clear. It has to be an incitement to violence for it to count as sedition. And two, has everybody been asleep all these years, including those who think that this is a jailable offense? Sanjay Hegde, I will bring you in on the law, but Tehseen, Poonawalla, let me bring you in. And yes, Eid Mubarak to you and everybody else. Tehseen, what do you make of what's happening?
Thank you, Barkha, for having me on the show. There is the law that acts because it should act in defense of the country or to uphold the majesty of the law. And then there are bureaucrats and LGs who act or force the law to act to uphold what they believe is their political agenda. And that, I think, does not uphold the majesty of the law. Now, I'm not a fan of Arundhati Roy. In fact, I think she's stupid. And I'm saying this word with absolute no hesitation. I think she's ridiculous. But stupidity doesn't deserve a sedition. Vinit said, look, if there was any other person, he would have been prosecuted. She's being funded from abroad, deep green, deep red, but that's not what she's being funded, she's being prosecuted for. She's being prosecuted for something absolutely stupid that she said. And I don't know if stupidity deserves a jail term, but let me go back to the case in the US, Texas versus Johnson, 1984. This happened. Johnson burned the American flag outside the Republican convention. And a 5-4 landmark judgment, the American court held, and the ninth judge was a conservative judge, held that it is important and fundamental that the flag protects even those who hold it in contempt. Of course, George Bush disagreed against it, and I think a lot of people do, and that's free speech. But every time someone says something that does not lead to immediate violence, then how can you arrest them 2010, 2024, 14 years later? How is this justified? If she's got illegal money, illegal funding, by all means, prosecute her. That's not what she's being prosecuted for. Something she said in 2010 led to nothing. In 2024, you've woken up to prosecute her. Now, why is this happening? If we go deep into it before I end, is because the BJP wants to set a political agenda. And that's why I said, what must be upheld at all course is the majesty of the law. And the majesty of the law comes from the basic structure of the Constitution, which upholds the right to life, liberty, and free speech. If we're going to take away the basic structure of the Constitution, which the Vice President of India has and Chairperson of Rajya Sabha has spoken about recently, which the ex-Chief Justice, who is now in Rajya Sabha, courtesy the BJP, has spoken about, that the basic structure is debatable, then I think we're in a lot of trouble. Because it is only this basic structure that protects all of us as citizens, that makes Vinit and me equal. But there's a larger problem in this as I end. The minute you take away free speech, at a time when you find free speech inconvenient, you say, okay, it's not acceptable, free speech ceases to accept. Free speech is very good. Barkha, you and I, Vinit and I will have a great conversation, and free speech is flourishing. That's not free speech. When you and I fight, Barkha, and you uphold my dignity to disagree with you, and I uphold your right to disagree with me, that is the true test of both a democracy and of the law and our Constitution.
So basically, you're saying you don't agree with anything Arundhati Roy said, but you don't think she should be jailed for it either in 2010 or 2024.
No, I don't agree. I think, and I'm using the word stupid again. I think she's stupid. I think she's ridiculous. I think she's attention seeking. Perhaps even she needs psychological help. I'm not a judge of that. But none of that demand that she be jailed. None of that demand she be jailed. That's not fair. Yeah. She didn't lead to violence immediately. Had it led to violence, as in the case of Sharjeel Imran, where I make an exception, where he came down and he said India should be cut off, Assam should be cut off, the chicken neck, and all of these states should be made separate, so people there suffer. That deserves prosecution, not this. I'm very clear on that.
Sanjay Hegde, speaking from the perspective of the law, the Supreme Court also has a 2013 verdict where it actually says, looking at the UAPA, the anti-terror law in which this prosecution has been granted, that the prosecution basis should be explained. We do not have an explanation from the Lieutenant Governor as to why he has sanctioned this, right? Secondly, the Supreme Court has also been quite clear that something is seditious if it incites violence. Without the incitement to violence, the mere expression of an opinion is not seditious. What do you believe is going on here? Do you believe this is weak in law? It might be weak or strong in politics. That depends on your opinion. But is it weak in law?
It's absolutely weak in law. Now, firstly, let me explain to you that this is not a case of sedition. Sanction for sedition was sought, and I believe that the Lieutenant Governor had turned it down, saying that the sedition law itself has been kept in cold storage by the Supreme Court. Now, there are certain disruptive activities which come within the fold of the UAPA, which are being sought to be applied. However, the UAPA also has rules. The rules say that an authority must first recommend that this is a case where the government must grant sanction. After that, the government must consider the authority's recommendation, and it is not bound by the recommendation. It must grant sanction. It may grant sanction. It may not grant sanction. Without sanction, a case can't proceed further. So the first thing we have to understand is that we are at a threshold where the government has applied its mind and says this needs to go to for prosecution. However, I believe that this very decision to grant permission is vulnerable and should be struck down by a court. Firstly, on the mere question of delay, it doesn't take 14 years to decide whether a speech openly made in a public environment. I think it was some little theater auditorium in Delhi, and it was covered in the press at that point of time. So in 2010, you take a decision. This comes in within the UAPA, and I'm going to prosecute. You can't keep something indefinitely in cold storage, and after 14 years, say that now I'm going to take it out. Forget the ordinary law of limitation, which would have applied to ordinary crimes under the IPC. Now I'm going to bring out the sword of the UAPA. There is a judgment of the Kerala High Court in circumstances which were much less. It was a CPML member called Rupesh or someone like that. And there was barely a delay of 6 months. But the Kerala High Court said, no, if you have made rules, those rules are mandatory. If you haven't followed them, then you can't grant sanction at all. I believe that if Ms. Roy or the Kashmiri Professor Showkat, if either of them were to challenge this on delay, the sanction itself would go, and with it, the entire prosecution.
So the question then is, what is being hoped to be achieved here, Arnab? You're an author yourself, and you may not be on the same side of the political fence as Arundhati Roy, but as we have one of our audience members saying, this is a classic case of missing the forest from the trees. It actually trivializes anti-terror laws and elevates Miss Roy. Arundhati Roy hasn't been in the headlines for a very long time. Now she's in the global headlines. What has been achieved here, according to you?
So, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, Barkha. The last time I was here, we were discussing something very similar about Natasha Call. And Natasha Call's, and my point then was that by doing what the government did, they made her brand. In this case, they're reviving Miss Arundhati Roy's brand. Like, she's the OG of all agent provocateurs, I would say. This is her brand. And I would disagree with Tehseen when he says that she's an, I think you used the word idiot or something of that sort. She's absolutely not. I mean, first of all, she's a great novelist. Let's all agree on that. Or maybe we don't agree on that. But she's definitely very intelligent. This is her brand. And what the government is doing is, in my opinion, she's actually become irrelevant. She was relevant in the 2010s. And by doing this, they're basically, and this is what I tweeted, it's like trying to revive the career of Fardeen Khan in this day and age with a reboot of Prem Magan. I mean, which I think is a good idea, but not this. Especially because I think and this is with NDA 3, we have to show as a country, and maybe this was an issue in this election, is that we should not be concerned as a mature democracy with what some people who are in any case going to say this to that audience, that we should be concerned as a nation by what they said. And by reacting like this, and that to 14 years after she said this, because there is no reason, right? There has been no act of violence that has followed from that, and we have had 14 years to see that. So if at all anything, the situation has become better. Why would you put that back on the front page internationally when she has no influence, in my opinion, anyways, outside some very rarefied academic, let's say, places which would listen to, let's say, a Naomi Klein, that kind of, she's not mainstream at all.
So why do you think they've done it? Before I take this back to Vinit and Tehseen, why do you think they've done it?
if I could guess, they actually wanted to put her on the front page news. There were other things that they would rather not have on the front page news at this point of time. This was like, boom, what can we do? There's something lying there from 14 years. Let's do it right now.
So
I mean, that's
is
the
it
only thing
is
I
it
can think of.
so it's a good change of headlines, is what you're actually saying. We don't know. Vinitji, is that what you say? Is that what you would agree with? And let me add a point of my own. My election travels started in Kanyakumari and ended in Kashmir, and this is the point when the government should have been doubling down on the extraordinary headlines from Kashmir in terms of its turnout, right? Historic turnout. Instead, you've gone back to some old chapter of Kashmir. उसकी तो हम कितना आगे निकल गए हैं on the Kashmir discourse also.
And as I said in my first this thing also that it is delayed. Only thing is it is delayed because as per me she should have been convicted and served her terms. Now see, Barkha, let me make a point. Separatist or whether it is sectionist, whether there are enemies within, whether there are these Naxalites, or there are characters like Sarjit Imam, what Tehseen Bhai said. This all are the output or a product of the seeds which have been sowed by these kind of farmers called us, Susan Arundhati Roy. Now, Susan Arundhati Roy knows what she does. She does it deliberately with full knowledge, and she knows that the repercussions don't come in 1 to 2 days. She's trying to set an agenda which will create a new world order. When I say new world order, it means orders for weapons from both the side, whether it is from the security forces
But
or
she's so powerful. One person can set a new world order. One person can set a new world order. Then she should have been able to
good.
define. She should have been able to ensure a loss for Prime Minister Modi to start with. Forget a new world order.
No, no. So who said that she is only one? This is your assumption. When there is an investigation, you identify, then you'll know what are her links. So let the investigating agencies have their own work done. They will identify whether she is a lone wolf or she is a part of the larger deep green and deep red cartel around you, which wants to break the country.
Viniji, do you think that she should be sent to jail for her opinion on Kashmir expressed in 2010? And what might you think will that make India look like in the eyes of the world?
So let me answer your second question first, and then I'll answer the first one. It will send a serious message to the world that we don't take separatists and enemies within lightly. We will take the same actions what you expect US to take against people like them or USSR to take against like that. There are provisions in this law, and world will look at us in a higher spirit.
Okay.
We don't take it lightly. One. And let me answer your first question. I wish there were a stringent law and which could have been taken up somewhat with the courts. When the courts can open at 3 o'clock for terrorists, why can't the courts call the government and say, okay, why did you delay this? They should punish people who have delayed this. They should take this on the fast track. Question the authorities. Why did they take 11 years?
Okay, let me get reactions. I think you're today the only person on this panel who thinks that she should be arrested for her comments. Whether Tehseen and Arnab don't agree with her comments. But they don't think she should be jailed for them. Tehseen, the point is this has become a proxy political argument between supporters of the BJP and supporters of the opposition. What are the politics of this? What line do you think the opposition would and should take on this?
Not play on this pitch, because this pitch is a victory for Prime Minister Modi. He will win on this pitch. So don't play on this pitch.
Explain that.
I'll explain that. Let good lawyers like Sanjay Bhai here defend her in court and let the courts do their job. No, don't make political speeches. Don't get into the politics of it. Parliament is starting on 24. There's a lot to hold this government on ground for. Arundhati Roy is not going to be the center of it. Why has it happened just before Parliament? It's happened just before Parliament because the government is scared that now with the opposition and its increased strength, 232 versus 290 odd, there will be, at least in the Lok Sabha, there'll be opposition. They'll be heard. They'll be forced to hear the opposition. What is the best way to stop an opposition? By diverting the issue. And the BJP, particularly the Prime Minister, is a master at diversions. So, and every time the opposition takes bait, falls for that bait and argues on issues that don't really matter. You ask a common man on the road right now, and I know that free speech must be protected, but you ask a common man on the road, who is Arundhati Roy, as much as Arnab thinks she's a great novelist, which I don't, the common man on the road doesn't know. He might perhaps know who Fardeen Khan is, and between Arundhati and Fardeen, I prefer Fardeen. But jokes apart, it's not your core issue right now. So the opposition shouldn't fall into the trap of the BJP. Let the BJP do what it has to do. Let's have good lawyers like Sanjay, good authors like Arnab come there and defend it or do what they have to do. Let the law take its course. Don't fall for this political battle. I'm very clear about it. The minute you fall, there's going to be only one winner, and that's going to be the BJP. But on the larger end, I think what the opposition can do.
But when you
Arundhati
say
Roy,
that, 1 minute, there's a contradiction in your response. When you say that if the opposition plays on this pitch, the BJP is the winner, that means that you think the BJP has not been quite so silly as its critics are saying in raising this issue. You think that there is
of
smart
course not.
politics
It's
in
done
it.
deliberately. Please, Barkha,
What's the idea?
you are more
I'm asking
experienced than all of us put together here. Of course, it's done.
Why?
2010,
What's the aim? What's the aim? Arnab says the aim is diversion. What do you think the aim is?
Diversion. The opposition with 230 is going to come with bigger strength in Lok Sabha. They are not going to have answers. Chandrababu Naidu is tickling them. I don't think he'll take the speaker for the speaker post. There is going to be some amount of pressuring on the prime minister. They don't want that. They want to run the. So, what is the best way? The best way to avoid any serious discussion is divert to issues that don't matter. Somebody said something in 2010. Vinit says that, listen, this is a very serious issue. She could have broken up the country, created a new world order. But the country didn't break. A new world order was not created. Then he says in 2024, we should investigate if she could do it. If my chachi had an Adam's apple, she would be my chacha. It doesn't work like that. She doesn't have an Adam's apple. She's not my. So you can't come down in 2024 and say, if she in 2010 could have created a new world order. No, it doesn't work like that. So there is no new world order created. Kashmir continues to remain an integral part of India. In fact, most after the abrogation of Article 370 on August 5, 2019, I think there will be people who say stupid things, just like Fardeen Khan did stupid movies. You let go of them.
Okay, I don't know where we've gone with our metaphors today with Chacha, Chachis, Adam's apple, and Fardeen Khan. So it's good to be able to enjoy a joke or two also. Once again, Vinitji, let me get Sanjay and Arnab, and then I'll come back to you. Sanjay, what happens now? What happens now? Like, explain to us the modality. Now the governor has allowed sanction for prosecution. Abhi kya hoga? Ya ho sakta hai?
See, what will possibly happen is that this very sanction will be challenged in a court of law and interim protection sought. There is another issue also. I believe that even a charge sheet has not been filed. So without a charge sheet, what exactly did the Lieutenant Governor sanction? That also is a question. You have an incomplete investigation and you've already given sanction for a prosecution. The other thing I would like to disagree with Tehseen is that she's not stupid. B, what she said, I was just reading the speech. Much more has been said in the Supreme Court in the course of arguments in 370 itself. So the situation in 2010 was a different thing. The situation today may be a totally different thing. When you are making a decision in 2024 to prosecute, you cannot impute all that you know in 2024 to the situation in 2010. So there is more than one reason for this to be struck down. And yes, and the politics part of it, Tehseen may be entirely right that the opposition parties need not get into this. Ms. Roy is quite capable of being a one-woman opposition to not only the government here, but she's been in opposition to most of governments all over the world. The difference is that most governments all over the world do not come into jail her. Some of them actually provide her a platform, listen to her and say, thank you very much. We've heard you.
Yeah.
The real test of a democracy is how you treat those who are not in the common medium. How you treat your writers, even your eccentrics. How big is the imagination that you allow your citizens?
But
we cannot simply say, shut up. If you say this, we will lock you. That is not a democracy.